I think it's something we can relate to as artists is, do we ever really feel qualified? Like, do we ever really have full confidence in ourselves to be like, I am the best person for this job?
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Or even when you find yourself on a list like that and you're recognizing all these other people going, holy shit, there's so-and-so and so-and-so.
Yeah.
And you have that moment of going, what am I doing on this list?
Yeah. And very much so. I'm like, this is very kind. This is very, very sweet. But no way. And I walked away from that message for about 5 minutes. And then I went to myself, I'm like, if you don't take the opportunity to at least say, it doesn't mean she's going to hire you. It doesn't mean she's going to book you. But I want to at least say that I was confident enough in myself to get over a bit of that imposter syndrome, to get over a bit of that nerves, and just really go in and go, I'm just going to take a shot. And I sent her a message and went, hey, Cal, thank you so much for the message. This would so intrigue me. I would love to hop on a call. And funny enough, the message I got back was, Christian, I literally was just thinking about you. I have an idea. Can I get you on the phone? And from there, I was teaching at her dance studio. I was one of the originating faculties of Kelly Kono's studio on Bowen Island, which is still running to this day with an incredible list of faculty.
Welcome to the Vocal Lab. I'm Sarah Ramsey, and this show aims to pull back the curtain on the entertainment industry, where veterans give up-and-coming artists some of the information they wish they'd had when they were just starting out. Sort of a music industry primer, if you will. I'm here today with Christian Lagasse, and Christian is a choreographer, dancer, mocap performer, and movement specialist with over 20 years of experience in the entertainment industry. Having worked on and appeared in over 250 projects for companies including 20th Century Fox and the CW network, Christian's work has been seen by audiences around the world. As a choreographer, Christian has had the chance to work with a wide variety of recording artists, including Vials, Michaela Slinger, Gen Z, Harlequin Gold, Serena Sun, Sorah, and many others. Whether creating for music videos, live events, or an exciting international tour set to be announced later this year, Christian loves being able to assist artists in bringing their confidence, their stories, and themselves to life. Thank you for joining me today, Christian.
Thank you so much for reading the bio that I paid you to read. No, honestly, this is wonderful. And Sarah, I'm so excited to be here. And to all the guests watching, hopefully around the world as we continue to grow this, very nice to meet you. And I also want to commend you. You said my last name properly. And that is a very, and not only my last name, you killed every single artist name I threw at you. So well done.
Ah, yes, nailed it.
She's like, no one's going to be suing me. Great.
It's been lovely having you on the show. Thanks. Goodbye.
Exactly. That's it. And the copyright infringement comes now. The NDAs are signed. It's great.
So I've had the honor of working with Christian in a couple of different teaching situations where I've been working with dancers, either working in sort of a musical theater setting or working with dancers who are really training to work on film and fleshing out their skill set. And so we've had the opportunity to work together a few times, and I've always loved I love working with you.
Oh, thank you. And for some reason, you keep inviting me back, and I'll make you realize on this podcast what a bad idea. No. And it's so funny to me because, and I want to jump in because I don't know if I've ever told you this. I actually have a connection to your family that goes way earlier than when you and I ever met. So
I don't think I do know this.
So when I joined, I've been a dancer all my life, as I said, over 20 years. If you want to get specific, I think it's about 24. But that just makes me sound really old. Or people are like, well, you were dancing since you were 1. I'm like, no, but let's not do the math on that. And growing up, I wanted to do Broadway. That was what I thought was my original goal. I had grown up doing theater. I had idolized Fred Astaire, Gene Kelly, Neil Patrick Harris, Jeremy Jordan, Nathan Lane, Robin Williams. So many incredible stage performers. And when I grew up, that's all I thought I was going to do. And through a twist of fate that we can get into later, I ended up in the film industry. Now, when I talk on interviews or when I tell people, I always accredit like 2014. I'm like, that's really when I booked my first kind of on-set commercials. I did my first movie, which was a small film called Disney's Descendants, choreographed and directed by Kenny Ortega. But I actually am lying, because in 2012, if it was either late 2012 or early 2013, I ended up seeing this Facebook post of a music group looking for dancers for this music video called Stutter. I don't know if you would know what video I'm talking about, but there's this little group called Mariana's Trench, and
I think I've heard of them.
Submitted it, and I submitted for the job, and I booked it. And my first ever time working on a film set when I wasn't graduated was on the set of your brother's music video.
That's so funny. I was there that day for film. I mean, I stopped by. I wasn't on.
Sure.
I wasn't in that video.
I was 17, probably looking like 9 years old in a sailor suit trying to hit on women. And I can tell you that was all poor points of casting choices. But it was such a fun video. And the thing, I don't know if I can say this on air, but I'm going to say it anyways. The thing I will never forget is the drummer, who I always blank on his name.
Ian Castleman.
He comes over to my group. And of course, this is a swing song, and it's all the one, and a two, and a three, and a four. And he walks over to our group and he goes, I'm just going to say, please, oh God, don't clap like white people. And he walks away. And I sat there for a moment and I went, what does he mean? I've grown up a tap dancer. I'm a percussionist. I'm a drummer. And about 20 minutes into filming, I went, I get what he meant, because no one could clap on the upbeat. No one could keep that timing. So
friends don't let friends clap on 1 and 3.
That is the phrasing. So no, it's so nice to be able to sit here. And as Sarah said, like, we connected at an incredible studio called Dance Co, where I was lucky enough to come in filling in for a teacher, and Sarah was directing and creating the vocals of these groups of different pieces, different musical numbers. And then we actually had you out to a program that I now co-direct, where you then got to share with our students. And it's been really nice to see in this industry just how open the creative community is, how willing they are to collaborate. And I think that's what's so fun. When you grow up a dancer, sometimes you get stuck in that mindset of like, it's about me. Everything's about me. It's about my solo, my time, my stage. It's what I can bring. And getting into film or getting into like just collaborative environments, all of a sudden you understand of just how much we can all support one another. Because there are things that Sarah can do that I wish I knew how, like hitting high falsetto notes. You know, all of these things would be great.
Well, it's just, I mean, I always love working with you. And it's so funny because our histories actually like cross over a few times then, because your first, big gig that you talk about is Descendants 3. And I vocal coached the artists for Descendants 3 as well, like behind the scenes. And so, just funny little ways that we all
And I do have to clarify, mine was Descendants 1. So I actually got in there a little earlier. So I was an actor on Descendants 1 and a chorus performer on Descendants 2, which meant we were dancing and lip syncing / singing. And then you stepped in. And of course, the musical artist that you were vocal directing was a girl that I grew up competing against. And I will say for the record, losing at competition, because Sarah is an absolute legend of a talent. And you know what?
She's
if
awesome.
That's the girl that I place second and third to, I think I'm doing okay in my life.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else in your, story, your origin story that you want to sort of flesh out for our listeners who might not know who you are? This might be their first introduction to you, a bit about you, who you are, where you, your journey in the biz, how you got where you are today.
I love that. How long do we have? How many of these are we doing? So as I said, I grew up a dancer. My mom was a theater performer, choreographer herself. She was also a voice actor on a show called The New Adventures of He-Man. So I very much grew up with an artist side of the family, and my dad was the president of a major company in Vancouver. So I was lucky enough to grow up with both a very business mindset and a very artist mindset. But dance was the thing. I was put in when I was 3 years old, and as the story goes, every time classical music came on, I burst into tears. Still not sure why, because I love classical music now, but 3-year-old me just had a vendetta. And
Mm-hmm.
they're like, this kid is done. There's no way. There's no way he's going to continue on with this. And after one of my teachers just really was supportive and created an environment. And I can think of being 8 years old and doing 15 to 20 hours a week of dance. By the time I was 12, 13, we were competing nationally, traveling throughout Canada. I was performing in guest spots on cruise ships in Vegas, in LA as a kid, through Disneyland. And I was just dancing, and dancing brought me into vocal lessons with the amazing Elaine Lindbergh, who brought me to Peter Jorgensen, of course, from the Arts Club. And all of this just surrounded me with theater. So I was doing theater productions. I think the first, and this is going to sound so bad with recent events, the first role I was ever cast in was Jafar in Aladdin. I still think that was one of the most creative casting choices they could give to a 13-year-old. But, neither here nor there. But I also got to play roles like Ugly in Honk, and that was not a character description. That's just like the story of the ugly duckling. I got to play Corny Collins in Hairspray, which I think to this day was still one of my favorite roles.
Yeah.
So I got in and did all of that. And as I said, when I graduated, theater was the goal. I had auditioned for the New York production and the Toronto production of Book of Mormon and had an incredible time, but that didn't pan out. And for me, I felt like my dancing skills were there, but I always wanted to be a versatile artist. And I went, singing, I think I still have a lot to learn. Acting, I have way too much to learn. So I wanted to go to theater school, and I had looked at all the options out of town, the dream schools of mine, which were like Sheridan and Ryerson and Randolph, AMDA, BYU at the time, OCU. And for me, financially, it just really wasn't plausible at the time. I had born in New West, grown up in Coquitlam and Langley, and just went, I just don't think I'm ready at 17 to, run off on my own and join a theater school or join the circus, which might have been a better idea. And so I auditioned for some schools locally and just didn't really resonate with any of them. I didn't resonate with what they stood for or their approach to the craft. And thankfully, my mom was like, well, you know what? You don't have to rush into university. Just take a year. Just take a year and study whatever you want. I may have taken that slightly too literally. I studied everything you could have done. I got into film acting, voice acting, theater acting, music production. I picked up 3 instruments. I was dancing 12 different dance genres. I started teaching at studios. I took film production, learning how to direct and produce and edit. Got a talent agent in February of 2014 and was like, okay, I think I just love all of this. I want to do all of this. And as I mentioned, in spring of 2014, we get this news story that Disney's Descendants, at that time, I think it was called Off the Island, was the big title they were using all over Google. And they went, yeah, it's coming to Vancouver, and Kenny Ortega will be directing the latest Disney franchise hit. And I went, oh my gosh, Kenny Ortega was my idol. High School Musical was one of the most inspiring movies to me because it was singing, dancing, acting. And I'm like, I could have killed that movie if I was old enough. And so I auditioned, and in a group of 165, I made it to the top 24 of my round. We got put on tape. We got to meet Kenny Ortega. He came over and was like, you've really got something special. And I went, I've made it. I've booked it. And then I didn't book the film. As it would happen. You're like, as you know, you're young and you're like, he talked to me. This is amazing. And then I didn't. And I got a call to do extra work. And I had no clue what extra work was. And they told me I had to bring 3 different black tie suits. I was 17 and had rented my tux. I did not have. So I went to Value Village and I showed up to set and I was so proud. And the costume designer goes, why'd you bring that? We have an outfit for you. And I went, what? Okay. She's like, no. You're playing a character. I'm like, I got a role. They went, oh, sweetie, no. You're just wearing a neon yellow, head to toe, bright yellow tuxedo. You can find this photo online. I don't recommend it late at night. And I got to do this. And it wasn't an actor role, but I got to, walk this woman up these huge flight of stairs, and we were her guards. And halfway through the day, this random occurrence happened, and I just heard this voice yell, I need a guy in a yellow suit. And I went, well, everyone else is asleep and I'm awake. And I ran up the stairs and I just see this guy and he goes, you here. And I'm like, okay, I'm running over. And as I get closer, it's Kenny Ortega. And he's like, what's your name? And I went, Christian. He's like, you were at the audition. You were fantastic. I went, thank you so much. You got a role in my film. And I went, sorry, what? And that was my first ever professional job. To this day, Sarah, I don't know what happened, but all I can say is that I got upgraded, and my whole role in this film was that, not to spoil the movie, but I think we're about 8 years past. I think we're okay. Yeah. Kristen Chenoweth gets turned into a lizard, and then someone puts a glass case down on the lizard. Dove Cameron, the incredible artist, plays her daughter, starts yelling at the guy to be like, hey, be careful. That's my mom. And he panicked, looks at her, bows, and runs away. And that was the first major film that I had ever worked on, the first acting role credit that I ever had. And I don't know about you, and maybe you can speak a little bit to your Disney experience. Something about getting paid thousands of dollars to be on a Disney set, hanging out with all of your idols and getting to play make-believe in the biggest green screen stage in Vancouver. I went, you know what? Like, I love theater, but maybe film is somewhere that I can spend some time and really appreciate the art form. And because it was Disney, it was true to me because I loved entertaining. I loved bringing people happiness and joy because that's what singers, performers, music videos, live concerts, feature films, TV shows, stage productions, that's what it did for me growing up. And I just wanted to give that back. And I've been so lucky since then with that, really, as I think Mariana's Trench, I'm going to have to credit as like the initial, like the pre-spark. But Kenny Ortega, I will forever be grateful because without that role, I don't know if I would have stayed in it. And that just led to a list of opportunities across Nickelodeon, Universal Pictures, Netflix as an actor, as a dancer, as a singer. I was a backup singer for a rap artist for a very, very short amount of time in Vancouver. But then also choreography came into play because of that. And because of all of this, and this, I know we're talking about a lot of, of artists, of what they can look to, kind of the guides that they're going in or the things that we wish we would have known earlier on. Yeah. So with choreography, a lot of my friends who are choreographers now, they grew up knowing. Like, I think from an early age, they all said to themselves, like, that's what I want to do. I want to choreograph, whether it's for theater or for film or for artists for tours. And for me, when I graduated, I started teaching because it was just the natural progression as a dancer. It was just that natural, well, I've been yelled at a lot in my life, and now I can yell at people. No, I'm being halfway joking. But for me, and it also paid really well, and I loved, it was free workout, and I got to teach, and I got to share what I loved. And
I think that's a natural transition for a lot of dancers to, once they sort of age out of where they're the ones going to competition and doing all those things, to age into becoming a junior teacher at their studio.
Very much. Whether it's starting, some people start right with recreational, some more like beginner young students, or even older students who are just doing it more for the fun and the love of it. Some of us go right into competitive programs. Others have gone into being teaching assistants. Others have started to set solos and duos where they get to work a little bit more one-on-one. Especially if you had a good track record throughout competition. Like my main genre, I had studied I'd say all dance genres that were not cultural based. So I hadn't grown up doing a lot of, say, Chinese cultural or Ukrainian or Irish, although I did Highland for a moment. But for me, my main style was tap. So as soon as I graduated, people were coming to me going, hey, you've always been a great dancer. We love what you do. Can we bring you in to teach these classes? And for a lot of it, it was like you would get a couple tap classes and then they go, hey, but could you also do a musical theater? Or could you also do a Broadway? Or could you also do a hip hop or a ballet or a jazz? And it was really nice to feel that diversity. So I was doing that for years. And this brings into one of the women who I have to credit all of my choreography career to, because without her, it would not have started. I truly believe that, or at least it wouldn't have played out in the way I've been so lucky to have. So growing up, there was a judge called Kelly Kono. Kelly Kono was a local dancer from, I believe it was Surrey, BC. Kelly, if you're watching this, you can clarify that later. But she had grown up in Vancouver. was a phenomenal performer. And most famous, she probably started working for someone you may have heard of called Janet Jackson. I don't know if that's a popular artist.
It rings a bell.
Yeah, the Jacksons, I think there were multiples of them. And
a few.
Yeah, she was in LA and she became a backup dancer for Janet and a great friend. And she worked with her for years. And through that, she also, I mean, I don't need to go into her credits, but please look her up. She is one of the most incredible, kind-hearted, talented people you will ever meet. And she had grown up as a judge for me. And then I had also, just assisted when she needed dancers to take a class for an award that she was being given from, I believe it was the Surrey Commerce or Business sector. She called a bunch of us and said, hey, if you want to come take a dance class, we're going to film it. And it was just these little interactive moments throughout our career. She also ran an incredible convention along with her sister, Dory, and Carolina, our best friend, called Triple Threat Dance Convention.
My kids danced at Triple Threat for years.
Oh my gosh. One of, and I'm going to call that out, one of, if not the best convention experiences you could have growing up. And they've since sold it to some incredible creators and incredible directors. But I would just offer, and I worked for years doing storeroom. Like we would have lunch and a bunch of dancers would get together and we would fold sweatpants. And it was just these little moments where we got to just connect with her as a person and hear all of her stories. So Kelly ended up moving to Bowen Island and she started a dance studio. And I remember getting this Facebook message and it was a message to like 95 people. And all of the people on this list, Sarah, I mean, they were people like you. They were OGs of the industry. They were incredible creators, people who were choreographing for features. And it was her asking who might be interested in joining her faculty, who might be interested in doing master classes, guest workshops. And I read that. And I think it's something we can relate to as artists is, do we ever really feel qualified? Like, do we ever really have full confidence in ourselves to be like, I am the best person for this job?
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
Or even when you find yourself on a list like that and you're recognizing all these other people going, holy shit, there's so-and-so and so-and-so. Yeah. And you have that moment of going, what am I doing on this list?
Yeah. And very much so. I'm like, this is very kind. This is very, very sweet. But no way. And I walked away from that message for about 5 minutes. And then I went to myself, I'm like, if you don't take the opportunity to at least say, it doesn't mean she's going to hire you. It doesn't mean she's going to book you. But I want to at least say that I was confident enough in myself to get over a bit of that imposter syndrome, to get over a bit of that nerves. And just really go in and go, I'm just going to take a shot. And I sent her a message and went, hey, Cal, thank you so much for the message. This would so intrigue me. I would love to hop on a call. And funny enough, the message I got back was, Christian, I literally was just thinking about you. I have an idea. Can I get you on the phone? And from there, I was teaching at her dance studio. I was one of the originating faculties of Kelly Kono's studio on Bowen Island, which is still running to this day with an incredible list of faculty. And if you're on Bowen Island, you should check it out. And even if you're not on Bowen Island, I recommend going, visiting, taking a class. It's incredible.
Love that.
How this goes into choreography is, of course, Kelly at the time had focused. She was back in Vancouver. She was still choreographing, but she had gone a little bit more into the film and TV work. And I just kept hearing about these incredible jobs that she was doing. And I think I must have made a joke one night at class of like, hey, if you ever need help, like, just let me know, paperwork, anything. I'd love to help out. And she called me a couple weeks later and she goes, I've got this opportunity, your union. And I went, oh, darn, no, I'm not. I wasn't in the dancer union or the choreographer union at that point. And she's like, oh, they need a union assistant choreographer, but I'll hit you up in the future. And people say this all the time in the arts industry. There's so many. It's like the equivalence of you seeing your university friends and then going, oh my gosh, we should go for coffee sometime.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, I think the intention is honest, but does it ever happen? I don't know. Well, Kelly had held to her word. And I'd say about a month and a half later, I'm leaving a class and I get this text and it goes, hey, what are you doing for the next month? I went, well, teaching for you, unless I've been fired. And she goes, I want you to assist me on a job. And this was the first outside of dance studios. I had set pieces for dancers. I had done little stage performances. But this was the first time I had ever got to choreograph for TV. And it was for a show that would be a huge effect on my life, not just as a choreographer, but ended up booking as a dancer and as an actor. was DC's Legends of Tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
This show gave me the craziest start possible, where we got to create a huge dance number with Kelly Kono as the choreographer, myself as the assistant choreographer. If I'm correct, almost 30 of the top dancers in Canada. We got to work with a bunch of the leads of the show, and that was my first job. And if I want to tell you, getting thrown into network television on your first time ever assisting choreographing, it is not for the faint of heart. It was long hours. It was weeks of work. I lived on Bowen Island for a little bit because there was always emails and work and choreo, but it was the best experience of my life. And for me, it was one of these things where I had told myself growing up, I'm like, I'm going to be a theater guy. And I'm like, but hey, there's nothing wrong with going into film. There's nothing wrong with learning about this side. And when this opportunity presented itself, I went, am I qualified? I don't know. But who cares? I'm a dancer. I'm hardworking. I love getting nitpicky with details of like forms and Excel sheets. I'm a nerd. I will call myself out right now. I was too great to head in math.
My language.
Like Sarah, like the glasses. Like I should have my glasses on right now. They're totally fake, but they make me look really cool. And for me, I wanted it. I wanted it so bad to experience that. And after that first job, like that must have been, I'm trying to think of what year that was. I want to say it's about 2015, 2016. And since then, to have choreographed on about 50 to 60 professional industry productions, some that I worked as a choreographer myself, some I've worked in co-choreographer capacities with mentors and faculty and friends of mine. Others we worked on Legends of Tomorrow for 4 seasons. That is rare enough. And if I'm not wrong in this, I think I'm the only person on that show to have been credited as assistant choreographer, dancer, and also principal actor. And I know that those first days of working on that show were what helped me to get those future roles. When I got in the acting, even the producer came to me and he's like, you should know, I didn't see your audition, but as soon as they said your name, I went, heck yeah, I love that guy. So all those little connective pieces, I never would have thought that choreography would have helped my acting or that dance would have helped my voiceover. But it was just being open enough to really sit in and go, I'm an artist. That's what it is. I love creating stories. I love telling stories. I love helping to bring stories to life. And whether that's in the medium of dance or choreography or acting, it didn't matter to me. But again, Kelly Kono, if you're ever watching this, I just have to say thank you because you changed my career in so many ways. And I will forever be grateful.
Well, and I think it really speaks to coming from that place where, working as a creative person, we know that most people who are creative beings, it's very rare that it is like absolutely isolated to just one vein of creativity. A lot of us are sort of multi-passionate creative people. And what you're talking about is that place of having to come from yes. Whether you know how yet or not, yes, and then I'll learn how. Yes, and then I'll show up and work my ass off. Yes, and then rather than, I'm not sure I'm ready yet.
Well,
and limiting yourself.
Exactly. Now, are there things in this world that I would recommend not faking your way through? Of course. I've had friends who've lied that they were professional horseback riders and then had to do full-on chases in a Western movie. I don't think that's the idea. Or friends who have lied to major production companies that they were aerial artists when they had actually never been more than a foot off the ground. For safety and health, yes, there are things that I wouldn't walk in and say that I'm an ambassador of Chinese cultural dance, because that is an outright lie and it is not a part of me. And I don't have, even in a year's time, that's not my job to take. That's not correct. That's not okay with my culture, with my background. And if you want that, I can recommend you 10 incredible colleagues of mine who will honor that in their culture, in their story, and in their heart.
And I think that is such an important piece of the creative community, is that if there's like, I know in my own journey, if there's a gig that I'm not the right person for, it makes me so happy in every fiber of my being to be able to recommend somebody else that I know that would be great for what you're looking for, and see maybe somebody else get the work. You know what I mean? I love that.
No, and that's it. It's the point of we don't have to be so desperate for every single job. Yeah. Now, I get it. We all have rent to pay. Vancouver or White Rock, they're very expensive places to live. That's why I live in the Valley. But, and not that that's much cheaper these days, but you want to get to the point where a friend of mine was ex-military, and he had this phrase, and he would say it on every business call we did: high tides raise all ships. That means if I bring myself up and I can find more work and I can bring more work to Vancouver, if I can find more productions and convince them that Canadian artists are the best, because I have a phrase that says we are, or I have at least a thought that says we are. And let me repeat that.
Go for it.
For me, the phrase high tides raise all ships, when he said that, is just the ability that if I raise myself up and I find opportunities and we can bring more opportunities to our community, to our people, to our friends, we can build them up. This isn't just a me universe, because when I get to these bigger productions, these music videos that I'm doing now for artists would not be possible without my assistant choreographers, my associates, my consultants, the dancers that I hire, the filmmakers that have taught me how to work with camera. And all of that, my entire career has been based off of just personal relationships. And that doesn't mean sucking up to people to try and get work. That means stepping into a room and being kind and being grateful and being honest. And much like you said, Sarah, I love nothing more than the ability to call one of my friends and go, you have a job. You're joining me on this. Or actually, I want you to take the lead on this and I'll sit back. I'm doing that right now. A director came to me, and without giving too much away of this project, he came to me and we had worked on a set together, and he goes, Christian, man, you're such a great dancer. I want you to come work with me. And I'm like, I love it. Cool. What's the style? He goes, tango. And I went, no. He's like, but you're a choreographer. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, didn't you grow up doing ballroom? And I went, yeah. And he goes, so do it. No. Because one, I haven't danced tango in probably 14 years. And B, I want to honor your project. I'm very grateful that you love me so much and you want me to be on your set. And I'll be there. But I am going to find you the coolest tango, paso doble, salsa, Latin culture, someone who's grown up with that, has studied it for years. Because sure, could I watch some YouTube videos and try and fake my way? But I don't want to fake a way. If the heart of your story is in tango, I want that story to be told at the best. Now, I can come in, I can talk about story. I can help with framing. I can help about pictures, because maybe this choreographer won't have as much film experience, but I can be the translation point. And when I got to call her and she goes, I've been wanting to do this for years, that's better than that job. That's better than that resume credit or that demo footage, because I got to give that piece to someone who will honor it. And I think that's something, like, we've talked so much in the past couple of years about cultural appropriation and just culture and honoring art forms. And this is one of the ways we can, because sure, would have been great to have that another choreographer credit to my name. But what matters more to me is that this story resonates with someone. And if I'm not the person to help tell that story, I will be nothing more than honored to give it to the person who will. Because that person, and that doesn't mean I'm giving it to my friend going, but by the way, you're going to pay me back. No. If you put out kindness, kindness will come back. If you put out goodwill, 100%. Goodwill will come back. Look at it as fate. Look at it as spirituality. Look at it as karma and physics. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. I told you I was a nerd. And that's all it is. It's like, if we can just continue building that within our community, I think, like, Sarah, you are an incredible singer, vocal coach, creator, vocal director. But I'm sure that there are musical genres there you're like, I could do it, but do I really feel like Italian opera at 8 a.m. in the morning? Or maybe you do.
No, you are 100% correct. I can sing in a choir all day long, and I can sing the classical repertoire if I am being directed properly, but I am not a classical singer.
Yeah.
So I do not belong taking up space as a classical soloist, teaching classical music to students. In a choir setting, that's different because, like, I've sung in choirs for 40 years, and you work in so many different styles of repertoire, even within the same choir. So if you're being directed well, that's a bit of a different thing. But as a soloist, I have no business taking up space as a classical soloist because that is not my training. That is not my area of expertise. Yeah. And there are other people who will kill it. Yeah. And I'm not that. So what business do I have taking the work away from somebody else who will do a fantastic job? Yeah. And I am the first to say to students, if what you want to do is study classical voice, I am not the teacher for you. I can help you find somebody who is, but that is not my area of expertise. If you want to pop or rock, if that's the kind of voice that you want to study, then we can have a conversation. But if you want to be singing opera, no, I'm not your gal.
And that's okay. We don't need to do everything. Now, I think there's a beauty in being versatile. And going back to something you said before of how often do we ever get to do one thing? And I'll speak to that as a choreographer. Like, yes, I have my main genres. My main and the things that I loved the most growing up were tap, Broadway, and hip hop. Those were the genres because, let's be honest, I was a 6'2" tall, lanky guy. Ballet was just going against my body and I couldn't jump through the roof. So as far as ballet was concerned, they're like, you're useless as a male. Thank you, ballet teachers, for ingraining that in my self-image. Therapy is a great thing. And jokes aside, I think all of us as dancers and artists, we can use therapy from time to time. We have a lot of things that we've grown up with.
Or from all the time to all the time.
Yeah, exactly. But it's expensive. I mean, I think, honestly, Sarah, you and I went into the wrong business. $210 an hour to sit in a room with someone. I like those pay rates. But for me, and then again with jazz, like I was competing against the Sarahs of the world, these incredible artists who could kick behind their head, who could do flips. I loved jazz. I loved learning about these. But did it mean that I was
FYI, Christian's referring to Sarah Jeffries, not me, Sarah. I cannot do any of those things.
I was meaning this Sarah. This Sarah has secret videos from honestly, I think you could pull out some old school cabaret and it would be great.
Oh, probably, but I never trained in it. I can actually kind of like hip hop. I can kind of roll with that, but like kicks behind my head and
triple
jumps and splits,
full jumps, aerials.
Hard no.
So
none of those things.
It's like I loved jazz, but I was never the strongest at jazz. But for me, I always knew that I'm not going to be a full-on company, rockette or cabaret jazz dancer. I wanted enough training to understand the world and to be able to create. And I loved fusing genres and bringing things together. And that leads into choreography. There was a music video I did a couple years ago with a wonderful team of directors and producers, and I got to bring on my co-choreographer at the time, Shahrazad Ahmadi, because there was more of a contemporary aspect, and actually I should say as well as Hayden Rivas, who was my lead assistant choreographer. And the director came to us, and I found this on Facebook. We had connected, and I went, I listened to the song, and it was this incredible, contemporary, ethereal EDM track with some really cool drops. And it turned out that all the vocals were synthetic. And I went, this is incredible. I went, what's the dance genre you see? And he goes, oh, it's like contemporary. And I went, okay. Because anytime someone in the industry says contemporary, they have different views. Some people have watched Crystal Pite in French operas and gone, that's contemp. Other people have watched incredible creators like Stacey Tukey and Mia Michaels from So You Think You Can Dance and gone, that's contemp. People have gone to the underground, very dark, almost mystic, creepy style, very abstract contemp. And then some people have called what is actually modern to a lot of people, which is the technical syllabus. They've also called it contempt. So every time someone says that to me, I'm like, Okay. Do you mind sending me videos? Reference videos.
Yeah.
Reference videos. And I'm going to say this to all the artists, all the choreographers. I don't care if you can speak the language. I don't care if you know exactly how to describe it. But if you can show me a video that says, this is what I see in my mind, that's one of the best ways to converse with any creative, whether that's a director or a showrunner or a producer or your choreographer. And he sends me these videos. The only way I can describe what it ended up turning into was a mix of salsa, contempt, and like bohemian style calypso belly dancing with a Moroccan flavor, with this merge of all these genres. That was the beauty of it, growing up and not going, I'm only going to choreograph contempt, or I'm only going to feel comfortable choreographing hip hop, or I'm only going to be specialized in this one little piece. And same to music of like, I only do pop or I only do country. You can be great at something. You can love that thing. But I had a slight phrase in my head when I started the industry. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be the guy along with my mentors who choreographs all the tap pieces in the world. I am going to bring tap back into the industry. Sarah, in about 8 years, I think I've set 2. And 2 of those were for me on commercials where they just went to me and said, hey, can you choreograph your section? And I went, yeah, this is easy. Now, there are people like Chloe Arnold and Michelle Dorrance and Sarah Wright who are doing incredible work to bring tap back. But if I had been so petty or so like blind to this, like I'm only going to do this. And those 3 women that I just mentioned also are all phenoms in other dance genres that influences, like Sarah, who has she has an entire tap album that I really suggest you look up. And I believe it's called New Change, if I am not screwing that up. An incredible album where tap is part of the instrumental complex of this jazz and Latin. But she has a full background in like Latin fusion that she brings in. Chloe Arnold was the choreographer, and I guess congratulations to them sad and congratulations on the James Corden show. And she was the choreographer for all the musical numbers on that show, from my awareness. And she was doing Broadway and African and Cuban and just all these things that were influencing. All these people are bringing things to life while honoring the things that make them them. Because that's the thing. You could take 12 dancers in a room who have all studied jazz dancing, whatever that means. And if you gave them all the same music video, all the same project, each one of them is going to be different. Because yes, we are bringing ourselves to your story, your vision, your references. But I also hope that if you're bringing me on, it's because there's something specific about my movement complex or my movement style or the way that I create or the stories that I tell, because those are the things that are just intrinsic to all of us. I mean, it's the same with singers. When I listen to 5 singers on The Voice sing the same song, there's all those it's those little color notes. It's those little intricacies that just makes it unique to you, rather than just going, this is an AI software, which we can also get into.
Yeah. So I'm going to focus us in because that was an awesome answer to tell us a little bit about who you are.
Sorry. That's okay.
No. We went down like so many fantastic rabbit holes, and I don't even particularly care if we get through all my questions, but I do have some questions that I want to ask you. And I'm, now Siri thinks I'm talking to her. Good
Honestly,
Lord.
Those Apple Watches are great. I mean, especially as a choreographer, to be able to play my music and not have to walk back. I sound so lazy when I say that, but there's something about having to replay a song every 7 seconds back and forth to a music stand that is just agitating.
I am also going to say, as a voice teacher, having an Apple Watch when you are teaching dance and being able to stop the music instead of yelling over the music to tell your dancers what to do. There's actually a piece of that if you're not going to wear a headset so that you're amplified, being able to stop your music, there's actually a piece of that is voice care. Right? All right. So I have a few questions that we're going to run through, and I'm sure we will end up down more rabbit holes as we go.
You reel me in.
But here on the Vocal Lab, you know that the deal is we're kind of trying to shine a light into the industry through the lens of what I know now that I wish I'd known then. So with that in mind, if you were starting your career over again, Is there anything you would do differently, or what springs to mind that you would make sure to do the same all over again?
Oh, how emotional do I want to get with that? No. I think one of the things that I would do the same is just talk to everyone. And I say this partways as a joke because, as you've realized from 45-minute intro land of me, I love talking. But the honesty is that growing up a male, especially in an art form dominated by females, I was bullied a lot. I had to move 11 different studios, 11 different training facilities from the time I was 3 years old to 17 years old. And a lot of that was because of harassment or physical abuse or threats that I received in anonymous forums. And it was hard. And for me, the one thing that kept me through it always was that I loved what I did. My ability to entertain people and bring people laughter and joy on stage, or see my friends at competition, or just move as a dancer and sing for the little bit of time that I did in theater. I loved it more than life itself. And the reason I bring this up is, do I wish that I would have gone through that? No, I wouldn't wish anyone would have to suffer to learn this. But what it did teach me is that I was so used to just connecting with new people all the time. Like, I never had a friend group for more than 3 or 4 years before I moved on. And dancers being the way they are, they're like, "You've left the studio, you traitor." And then we never spoke again. So most of my friends were at competitions. They were the ones, I had friends at every single studio possible. And going to competition or going to a show was like the coolest family reunion ever. And what it just taught me was how to network. It taught me how to network. And because to me, I didn't know the term networking. I wasn't going up to these people at a time in my life where I'm like, "Please hire me for a job. I could really use a paycheck to cover my car's down payment." For me, I just loved meeting people, talking to them, asking about them. And I always made it about them because I wanted to learn what made them tick, what brought them to life, what made them happy, what were they doing next. And that gave me skills that I had no clue. As a kid, I'm like, I just like being nice and chatting. But it made me one of the strongest networkers in a room, and where my friends will sit at a table and go, "How do you go and talk to people?" I'm like, I don't know how not to. So that is one thing I would go back and do the exact same. Would I avoid some of the traumatics in between? Sure. But I would go back and just remind myself of, like, don't be worried talking to people. Yes, there are people in a room who are more talented, less talented. It doesn't matter. There is something to take from every single person in every single room, even if they have nothing to do with your art form, because you don't know who that person's cousin is, what they're doing, what their dream is. I was told by a mentor early on of, like, just tell everyone your dream. When you go to Starbucks, tell someone your dream. When you're on the bus, probably not, because buses in Vancouver are just not a good time right now. But like, everywhere you go, just be okay with talking about, I want to choreograph for The Greatest Showman 2, or I really want to create a live tour. Because even my students who now come to me and go, "Hey, my dream is to tour with a recording artist," she now has an offer to tour with a recording artist 6 months after telling me that. And if she had never would have said that, I probably wouldn't have even thought of her. So that's one big thing. If I was going to go back and change anything, I think be careful of who you give your time to. Especially, and I did it with acting, and I did it with choreo, and I say did with choreo as if it wasn't just a couple months ago. When you're trying to get into the industry as an artist, and I'm sure some of the singers listening can relate, you're like, I just want to take every job. I want to take every opportunity. Every show is a good show. And one of my teachers used to say that. They went, every project is a project to learn. And I go, great. But when you're working in film, especially as an actor or a choreographer, or even in live events as a singer, a musician, those are recorded. Those live online. Those don't go away. Like, when I grew up, I'm older than YouTube. I think a lot of people forget that a lot of us are older than YouTube, older than Facebook, older than Instagram. So as a kid, I'm sure that...
Older than the internet.
Yeah, let's not. I don't have that, but I did have...
I'm talking about me.
You do not look a day over 32. Shush. I had dial-up growing up. That's about as cool as I can get on that. But I don't think that every job is a good opportunity, because there are things, and I will not name them because I don't need people YouTube diving them,
Right.
but there are projects that exist of me locked up in a closet in a leather miniskirt with a python and 9-inch high heels. There are videos that exist of me portraying a rapper in the middle of a video that they thought would be a really fun parody to do. They were really cool opportunities, and you know what? Deep down inside, I'm still very proud of them. But little things that I'm like, do I really want this to be a part of what represents my work as an artist? Or even short films where I was like, dude, you were not qualified to act in that. Like, I just wasn't prepared. I wasn't ready, and I had auditioned for a role, and they said, no, you need to be the old guy with a beard. And I was 19 and barely looking 11. So I think it's always good to take a meeting. I think it's always good to hear people out. But what I would tell my younger self is, listen to your intuition a little bit more. And I think a lot of us have trouble with that because intuition and ego gets very close together, and we're not sure what. Or the voices of our teachers and our mentors and social media telling us, or some friend being like, this is going to make and break you, or like, this is going to be your big break. And we hear about that in LA of like, well, just do it. No, I don't believe that anymore. I think if I could go back and remove a few projects, it was just what I put into it. The energy, the time, the money did not give me an outcome that was worth what I put into it.
Right.
Or just overstressed me out because I took 5 jobs on at once and thought, well, if I don't take these opportunities, they're not going to come back. And just to remind myself of like, if you really care about this, if you're in this, this is not that whole joke of like, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It's true. Don't overkill yourself in those starting years because you will get burnt out. And when those jobs present that would have been the right opportunity, you're either going to be petty or vengeful, or you're just going to be dead, because at that point, you're going to have no energy and no creativity left to you.
Thanks for joining us today. That was actually just part 1 of our interview. And I would love it if you come on back Thursday to catch part 2. Can't wait to see you then.